Okay, then. Hello, everyone. Michelle went through. I'm pronouncing your name correctly, right?
It's Michele, but Michelle also works.
Sorry, Michele. So
Don't worry.
Michelle went through like the bigger picture of the what is MLflow. MLflow is a powerful machine learning framework. It's used for managing the life cycle of your machine learning project, from tracking all the parameters you used to what sort of dataset pipeline you have used, what part of the code, the packages you've installed, the version of the packages, everything will be in one place. And it helps organize the research workflow. So just for example, this is a experience that for researchers, you've all probably had this before. You are working on a paper, you have to run multiple experiments. You need to find out let's say you're using neural network. You need to find out the architecture you want to use or the model. Are you going to use some classification model on scikit-learn or something else, or what type of classification? And after that, you need to run those models on your data set multiple times to optimize and tune your parameters for that model. Then you need to, before that, you need to pre-process the data. And so ideally, you will create a pipeline that would specify how to process the data. And when you're done with this, then it comes the experimentation phase, which you need to run different experiments with these models. And then when you're done with everything, you start writing your paper. 6 months goes, you submit the paper, you get some reviews, some feedback from the reviewers, then you need to give me this other image. A lot of times, if you're not organized, you would have a very hard time finding the exact model that was used for what you need today to replicate some results for the reviewers, for example, or for yourself, or you're a professor and you have a new PhD student that wants to continue the work of your previous student. And in order for the new student to bring in the loop with everything, it would be a huge hassle. Frameworks like MLflow tries to mitigate these issues and make your life easier, essentially. It has various features. It could be used for experiment tracking, which is probably going to be the most utilized for most of us in academia. It is platform independent or agnostic, which means that when you have the model, you can save it in a certain type that then you can run. For example, you could train a model with Keras and then run it with PyTorch, or with scikit-learn and then run it with something else. Or if you work in Linux, but your friend works in Windows and the other friend work in Mac, with MLflow, you can overcome the challenges of going from one environment to the other. You would still have a lot of some issues with installing the packages, as there are some dirty work that unfortunately still you have to take care of. But without it, you would have a much harder time. Without it, you need to know exactly which packages to install and all of that. But with MLflow, ideally, you can just run one line of code and it'll install everything you need and show you the results. Like you want to share this with reviewer or with your PI or somebody, you just give them the link to how to run from the model registry, and ideally everything should work. But it's not 100% perfect. Life's not perfect. From personal experience, there are still some hassles that you need to take into account. For working with ML projects, at least in the UA, you have various options. You can use HPC, you can use Cybers, or if you have some GPU in your lab, you can use those. Or if you have a strong PC, you might end up using that. Or if you're not working necessarily with terabytes of data sets, your database that are smaller, maybe you're just using your laptop. So the machine can be anything. In my experience, when I was a PhD student, sometimes I would use all of these, like go from one to another. And if I wanted to recreate my environment and everything in each of those, it would be a nightmare. Then for data analytics, you might end up using various different packages. You could use scikit-learn, Bubble, Pandas, or for database, you could use SQL, Postgres. Uh, the great thing about MLflow is that because it's open source, there is a very huge community that keeps adding to this framework. And so many of the things, if not almost all of the things that you utilize for your data analysis, if you're a data scientist, biologist, engineer, it's probably covered by MLflow. It doesn't cover the data set management, keep that in mind, but you can save your data set pipeline which is usually code as part of the parameter tracking. And the other benefits of it is that when we want to collaborate, if we're not a team of one, we usually adopt GitHub, Bitbucket, things like that to work around the collaboration the part. If you utilize MLflow, then you add multiple other layers on top of the simple push and pull on like GitHub, for example, because then suddenly the PI or the person at the top have access to all the changes that is made by each developer or each scientist and know exactly what's happened and then can decide whether incorporate that into the entirety of the project or not. But MLflow obviously is not the only one. There exist other frameworks by the private companies. Facebook had a learner. The existing one is not a few years old, so they might have newer models. I haven't updated that part. Like Uber had Michelangelo. Even MLflow was for Databricks, and the the disadvantage of utilizing those, for example, the Google TFX or the Facebook if Learner or Amazon or whatever, is that you are limited to their platform. Like if you want to use Google TFX, you have to use Google Cloud or same with AWS. And sometimes they don't give you all the algorithms you have to use their own algorithm or like your clustering problem or things like that. But because Databricks decided to open source MLflow, now suddenly we don't have those issues. It's community run and we don't need to be afraid that we might lose access or we might not have the freedom that we need in academic environments. MLflow has 5 components, which I went through the tracking mostly. As I said, tracking is recording the experiment's configurations. You sum of your result to the extent that it's not too huge. Like it's not a terabyte, it's just an image, for example, or a small Excel file. Your code, the exact code that was used to run that experiments. Like if you're using GitHub, you might end up having thousands of commits. But with this, then you know exactly that figure was created by that specific Git hash or that specific commit from the GitHub and utilize that. Then the other component is models, which there is a space that you can save your model and decide or put your best model inside the model registry, and so everyone could access that. The model itself saves the config for the model, which I'll show some details of how that works. It's just a simple few lines of code that says this what was used, what were some of the parameters for that model. And then model registry is where you deploy that model, whether for yourself, your team, or you want to share that link publicly with everyone. Although with model registry, then it'll become a little bit more complicated because if you want it to be public, you need to have server, and then someone needs to take care of that part for you. There is a project aspect which helps make your project reproducible. Project is where it saves what sort of packages and what version of those packages was used to run those experiments, and a few other things. For example, if you're using virtual environment managers like Anaconda, you can put your Anaconda file requirement files in that, and then whoever wants to utilize your model can just run those. And then there's a plugin which can create apps. For the tracking, I'm skipping through this. I already explained that. You can save your artifacts, meaning models. You can save metrics, accuracy, AUC, parameters, and you can add tags. What was the source? For example, the GitHub or local, and then you can also version it. In order to do the tracking, it's fairly straightforward. For example, this is a Python code. You want to, let's say, log your epochs in your neural network. You can just write MLflow.logParam, or if it's a metric, log metric, or if you want to log the model, log save. Or for a lot of frameworks, MLflow has the auto log feature. Like for Keras, it does have that. For scikit-learn, it does have that. That you can just put that, and then it'll log all the typical parameters from your Keras model. Not everything, obviously. All the things that is typical of your model. And then you can add other parameters and metrics on top of that. As I said, it works with various different frameworks like TensorFlow, Keras, R. You can utilize Docker too. You don't have to use like just the typical like virtual environment managers and Spark and many other things. The MLflow project component that I mentioned is this. Just it's a one file which you specify the, for example, my.env.yaml is the file that contains all the requirements for the packages. If you have a Docker environment, you can include the image of the Docker environment, and then any other entry points if you wanted that project to be run in a certain way, for example. For model registry, you can either use code to create a registered model, or you can, the UI is much more straightforward. I'll show how to do that. You can go to UI and specify which model is in which stage of your project for everyone to utilize that. Then for the server, if you're using MLflow on your local machine, you don't, it's very straightforward. You can do everything on your local machine, have all the files saved there, but then you don't get some of the benefits of being portable. So instead you can have some server, for example, on Cypress, and use Postgres, SQL, or whatever database that code that you like, you prefer. And so all the tracking metrics, params, artifacts will be saved there. And the artifact doesn't have to be in the same place as the URI, other metrics. It could be two different servers. For example, you can put the artifacts on S3 buckets on AWS if you prefer so, because those tend to be a lot bigger in size. For artifact storage, as I mentioned, or you could use HPC too. You can use SFTP to save your artifact inside HPC or Atmosphere environment in Cypress or data storage. These two are also a little bit older, but I assume you still have the option to utilize those, or you can just use the local. And when you're setting your experiments, you can specify the location to the artifact. For example, if it's local, you just need to put file, colon, and then dash the path to that directory. Or if it's or if you're utilizing SFTP, put SFTP, or if it's utilizing something else like X3, then I don't think I have all the options here, unfortunately, but there are like multiple different ways that you can talk to your server. I think we kind of went already through some of the benefits of MLflow in academic research. Obviously, makes our research reproducible, which is very important in our field of work. It makes the project management more efficient. We've all wasted a lot of time, especially if you're working with a lot of programming, on just setting up the environment and all the nitty-gritty and all the things that comes from simply not being able to be fully organized. But MLflow can help with those. It helps you with the method documentation too, which will be very helpful down the line, especially if you want to get back and access your results there. And then also result traceability. So for the, this is almost the end of the presentation. I'm going to show you some code to how to utilize MLflow. For the data set that I used for this is breast cancer classification. This is all imaginary, by the way. So the data set is not imaginary. It's 569 samples, 30 features. I hope those numbers are correct, because I was playing with multiple different data sets. I think it is this one, the latest one I'm utilizing. And a research team, let's say in this universe, you have a PI, you have some PhD students from engineering department and a biologist from the College of Health, College of Medicine. The technical stack for this specific project, I'm using Python 3.10. You can use anything you want, but keep in mind the lower you go, some MLflow versions might not work with that version of Python. And the lower you go, obviously MLflow, then more noisy becomes. It's better to use the latest version. I think the latest version worked with 3.10, so that would be good. And then I'm using scikit-learn for the classification, Panda for data processing, and Matplotlib and Seaborn for the visualization. For tracking server, I'm using local. I skipped the Postgres part and the Atmosphere VM to make it easier. Also for artifact storage, I skipped the Cyrus part because a lot of you might not need to do any of those things. Local might be enough for you because maybe you're a team of one, And well, I guess I've already gone through some of the challenges, so let's skip this. One of the downfalls of MLflow before we get to the code is, as I said, is the data set. It doesn't manage the data set itself, but it does. You can input the data pipeline. For example, you have 10 lines of code to pre-process the data in a certain way. You can save that, but not the data set itself. And then I guess these are fine. Let's go through the actual code. I don't know how many people want to follow me on this, but we have multiple routes. Let me reshare the screen. So one way is, this is the GitHub repo for this project. So I assume everyone have access to this. And then inside the MLflow folder, you can ignore a lot of these. These are the artifacts that was created when I was running the code. This is all you need, the Bioinformatics MLflow. You can run this on Colab. I created Colab for you. You can just need to click on this. Sorry, I didn't want it. And then duplicate this for yourself. and follow me when we're running this. Or if you want to utilize the code spaces, you can click on code and then code spaces. Then if you don't have RDA1, create one, and then just run that. Or you can utilize Cybers. I assume you've already gone through most of these, and then the discovery environment. And if you go inside the apps, there should be a Jupyter Lab Bioscience. I don't know if I should create another one and use my old one. So you can run that request. Well, let me show you these steps in case. Then you can request CPU memory, whatever you want. And then run it. I already have one, so I'm not going to create another one. I think this was the one I was using. Well, I guess I'm not allowed to utilize that. Anyway. So it doesn't matter which of these you follow me, whether it is the code space or Colab. My screen is shared, right?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, then, and you see the Colab and stuff, right?
Yeah, we can see Colab.
Okay. Yeah, for some reason, it doesn't have that green box anymore. So it doesn't matter which one you use, all of them should work. There is one small nuance when you're running in the DE, which I'll mention that when I go through that. Anyway, so, or you could download this Jupyter Notebook or the whole repo on your local machine and follow us there. So the only thing that you need to do, I've already done that once in that code space, but you need to install MLflow, Pandas, scikit-learn, and NumPy. If you want to use it directly through Jupyter Notebook, you can add the exclamation mark and just run it, and all will work. Because I've done it, I don't need to do that again. And then you import whatever packages you want to use for your project, plus MLflow. So for example, scikit-learn, if you're using Keras, you could use the Keras too. So let's run that. And I'm loading the breast dataset from the scikit-learn datasets. So I use that so that you don't have to download any files. That's why I was playing with multiple different datasets. And I assume everyone's familiar with pandas too, so I'm not going through the details of those too much. Just very briefly, PD is my panda data package, and I am converting the data set into a data frame so that I can take advantage of panda features. And then this is the database. This is the first 5 rows of the database. And this is some of the description of the data set, which if you're interested, you can look into later. So let's say we want to do some classification right now, okay? So we do the typical separate train and test, normalize it, and do a bunch of other normalization stuff to give us the train and test data set. Now that we have our data set, this is essentially our data set pipeline, which I was talking about. Now we need to create our first experiment. For MLflow, you can do MLflow.create experiment. But the problem with that is that it would work the first time, but from then, every time you run it, it will tell you that this experiment already exists. You can do the easier ones, which will work with the latest versions of MLflow, which just use set. When you do set, it checks if that experiment exists. It just loads that. If it's not, creates a new one. So let's run that. If you're following on the Cybers discovery environment, you need to include this line. This is the tracking UI for the registry I was talking about. File is because we're using local. It could be SFTP or it could be Postgres or whatever. We don't need that in local and code space and Colab. It works fine with those. So we're fine there. Now we want to run our experiments, right? So this is the function that runs our experiments. We are running a random forest classifier. If fit that the classifier on the train data, and then predict the results for the test data set, and also calculate the probability on top of the logits that we just measured. Then we are calculating accuracies, RC, AUC, and essentially this is the main training aspect of our project. And then we also are plotting some confusion metrics for this. So in order to incorporate MLflow into this, you can just simply put with MLflow.start run at the beginning of your code, or you could also do it this way. But it's not, it is more Pythonic to use with, because when you don't, then you have to always make sure you're closing the run that you just started. But if your code like crashes, then it doesn't get closed, and then it's just not very, it's messy. So it's more Pythonic to always use MLflow to with and then MLflow.start run. You can include some other information too, like run ID, run name. Run ID is if you want to rerun the existing experiments. If you don't include it, then it'll just create a new run for you. But you can also include a name for that. Or if you have multiple experiments set, you can specify the experiment too, I think. And in case of nested runs, let's say you have 10 simulation you want to perform. Under each of those simulation, you want to try multiple different parameters. You can do nested runs. And then in those cases, you need to specify the parent run ID. But we're not doing any of those. We keep it simple. So we do that. And then we are logging the number of estimators and maximum depth for our random forest because we're running multiple of these. We're doing a for loop. We're doing 50, 100, 150 number of estimators and 5 and 10 for the depth of our trees. And then do the rest. So again, you could do the MLflow.autolog for the scikit-learn too, but I'm not doing that here, but you can do that too. I wanted to show you all the details that we could save it manually. Then I'm logging. So here I log the parameters. Here I'm logging the metrics, accuracy, RC. And then here I'm logging the model, the train model. And then after this, I'm plotting the confusion metrics. So I save that as an artifact. And then close the plot, which that's not necessarily. So let's run this. So while this being run, you can go to your terminal and go inside the MLflow folder. If you do ls-l, you would see that, or you can see it here, I guess. See, there should be a folder called mlruns created in your whatever you specified here. If you didn't, it would be the same folder as before, where the tracking URI. So this is why the mlruns. You could put something else, but the default is mlruns. And then inside that, it saves all the parameters and everything. So in your terminal or in the Jupyter Notebook works too. If you go inside the folder where the mlrun exists and do MLflow UI, it'll create a server for you to see what you just created. So let me close this. This is our MLflow server essentially. This is the experiment we just created. I had some more experience from before, so these are what I have from before, and these are the new one that we just created. And inside each of the, because it was a for loop, and each of these was one experiment. If you go, you see you have number of estimator, maximum depth, accuracy, ROC, you have the model metrics, system metrics, and artifacts. Inside the artifacts, ML model is the MLflow project that I mentioned, which it has your model saved as a pickle. It has the Python version. It has your environment, your packages, the UID for this run or simulation. And you could also include other information later if you wanted to. Then all the packages we used, for example, 2.1 version of NumPy, the model, the pickle model. Well, this is, I guess, this is the environment manager, but that's for the plugins mostly. And it created both of them just in case, I guess, both the Conda if you're using Anaconda and just pip to make it easier for you. And this is the confusion matrix that we created for each of those simulations. So you can do a bunch of other things later. For example, you want to compare these 3 experiments. You can do compare, and you can look at because we're using same parameters, so it's all the same. But when you actually utilize it, you would have a lot more parameters, more complicated, and you can compare the different experiments to pick the best model for you. So let's go back to our experiment. So now we set the MLflow experiment, we run our simulation, we saved everything using MLflow. But you can do a lot more after that too. For example, we can search using code through all the runs, and like this few lines of code, for example, shows you all the experiments that has been run. The first column is the run ID, and then the parameters, accuracy, AUC. These are the things that I'm asking for. You can ask anything else too. Or you can use the existing simulations and plot some figures here too to compare the different experiments. Or the best, I guess, case scenario, one of the cool applications of this is you can search through all the metrics and pick the best model, load it, and now, so let's say you ran this a week ago and it takes a long time, so you let it run for different parameters for a week. After a week, you simply open MLflow, run a few codes to just look at the metrics and load the best model, the one with most accuracy, I guess, in this case, and then do the simulation, do the actual analysis using that model. Right now, if we're looking through all of those, and we're taking the best one. Here, I'm assuming is the first one is the best one, but you can obviously, this is a panda, so you can easily sort this based on that column. And so the first row is the most accurate one, or you can find, there are like an infinite ways to, not infinite, but there are multiple ways to pick which row is the model you're looking for. And then just continue your analysis on that model. But the other things that you could do, there are a lot more, but I've brought some that would be more useful here. You see the names, these are the run names. They were all generated randomly. But what if you want to have your own name? So in this case, I'm taking the best model that I just picked here and rename it to something that I want, to like best model one. For that, I simply run it with MLflow run again, but this time I specify the run ID which I picked from here, and then set the MLflow.run name tag to my new name. So let's run this. Now, if I go back here and refresh, you would see that it picked this one, I guess. This is from the older one. If this one was the best model, so you rename it to this one, and then we can go inside and access the artifacts and so on. So, or you run more experiments, same as renaming the experiment, the experiment. You can run more like data analysis on an existing run. Again, same concept. You specify the run ID, you load your model. This one, because with scikit-learn, I'm using scikit-learn, but you could, and you're not limited to this. And then, like here, I'm printing the histogram, for example.
Artin, we have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, Michael.
Okay, Michael.
Oh, I love mics. My question is, okay, so you are in code spaces, right? Is that what you're showing right here?
Yeah, this is code spaces.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The tab that says MLflow. Yeah, that. Where did that come from?
So
I went
to the terminal and
I don't have a terminal in I'm in Colab, so I can't actually do that.
you can instead do this. But the problem with Jupyter is that you need to create another cell and just do exclamation mark MLflow UI. If you run this, it'll create the same thing. The problem with, let me just do that right now. Let me close the terminal one. The problem with this is that it will continue running. And so you might have a hard time running other cells. For some reason, it didn't work here. But if you run this, it should do the same thing essentially. For some reason, my code space restarted itself.
MLflow UI.
Yeah, and then exclamation mark. Can you run?
Right. So it becomes a shell command. And then
No,
when
it gives you a link, same as the terminal that it gave me a link. You see in the terminal oh, I think code space crashed.
okay, thank you. I understand now. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so this is the link, the 120, and then when you click on it, it'll open this tab, which essentially has everything. If it was local machine, it would be 127.0.0.1, but because this is some like this Microsoft server, that's Google server, they have to open some ports and there would be a different link. I don't know, how can I go back to what I was doing? I'm wondering if code spaces have a timer, because it seems like it.
Codespaces have a timer, but only if they detect that you're not using it. It might just be that you run out of memory or something.
Well, I can open it again, I guess. Oh, I think my internet is having some issues. Seems like. You can continue that in the Colab too. Let me run everything here.
I didn't know that MLflow actually had like the functionality that you can see which one is the best model. That's really useful.
Yeah, well, it has the metrics, so you need to pick the best one. But yeah, especially when you have to let your model run for like weeks, this would be very handy.
Oh yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, for people using any of these, like this is like right now I'm installing all those packages. I said like for the code space, I didn't run it because I had already done it. But Colab, it seems like it restarted itself too, so I have to run it again. So now let's the whole thing. Yeah, code space, it doesn't detect the kernel now. I had some issues before too. It has some bugs in their server. Let me close this. And go where we were before. Interesting. It's so much slower. So now that I'm running this again, when we load the MLflow server again, we would see that there are like 10 more, or 6 more experiments now. Because we created 6 more experiments.
But now you're running in Colab, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter, MLflow. So that's the beauty of. Oh,
Oh,
although, so that no, you're right. That's a good point. If we're using a remote server, it didn't matter. It would connect to the same server, and we could see whether we saw there now here. But we're not using remote server. We're using local thing. Like you see, it has its own ML run, this is connected to GitHub, but it's not syncing automatically. Like you have to pull and push.
so you can kind of like set it up on a separate server and it will always track any experiments or models that you're trying to run.
Yeah. Like
That's
if you
really
want to
cool.
use a HPC, you won't be able to run it on a HPC. You need to have your own separate server. Like that's what I was doing, for example, during my PhD.
Gotcha.
I had a server in Cybers and then running simulation in HPC. So
Understood.
let's try this right now in MLflow UI. See, created a link. It's not working. Oh, it was working. Maybe I thought it was working before. I guess in Colab it doesn't.
Maybe it's
Like this isn't the problem, the Colab. So it didn't create this link
yeah.
for me.
You will have to do Colab Plus, but who's got money for that?
Oh yeah, I didn't check that. And the last time I had used Colab was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, if you click on the bottom left side, it says that you can access terminal. Bottom left.
It
But
doesn't.
it says
It's not about the
use
terminal
money.
link, right? This link part is a local links, but local to the Google server.
Yeah.
It's a link to local to us, so they need to like connect some ports, So hopefully we can do it again here. Did it work? No. Well, I can just go through what I was going to show. We won't see the MLflow, unfortunately. I can do that on my local machine too. I'll do that later. So I'm doing the same thing. Well, you remember when I was talking about the width? Like instead of doing width MLflow star run, you can do the typical one, which is not very Pythonic, run equal to MLflow star run, then do same exact things, and then more pictures, and save those as artifacts inside the MLflow. Again, same here. But when you do this, you need to end your run all the time. You need to make sure that you're ending your run. Otherwise, it won't work. Should
Why
I?
is that?
Because it's like anything else in Python and I'm sure other programming languages too, when you open, like you want to use Keras or all those things too, you have to always, when you do MLflow that start run, you're opening that simulation and it just keeps listening for new artifacts to be saved.
Got you.
And it doesn't know when it's supposed to end it until you tell it that, okay, I'm done with this work today.
Understood.
Why is still here? I guess I shouldn't. Well, I can't fix this, or we can end it here because I don't think there's much more I can show on the MLflow UI. I think I already went through everything.
We can end it here. I think this was a good show of the power that MLflow can give you, especially with being able to select the best model. And also the UI interface is extremely helpful.
Yeah. For some, I don't know why I thought Colab supported this link too, but guess it didn't.
They decided that making money is more important.
I don't know if that would fix it though. It's not the terminal problem, it's the
No, it's probably because Colab doesn't allow for another window to be opened, I think.
the Pro version does.
Yeah, I think so.
Then
Nora, you missed the presentation. And
Oh.
you're muted.
I just came to see how Arten's doing, so I'll watch the video.
We'll
How
have
are you
a
doing,
tutorial
Arten?
for you.
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing
Long time
good.
no see.
So did we get the flow of MLflow solved for the campus?
We almost did, and then the last 5 minutes, Microsoft decided to not let us use code spaces.
What?
But we went through everything. I think I just need to maybe create a new workspace. That should be fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
the idea will, what I do when code spaces fails is I just delete it and open up a new one and it works again. So
Well, when you do that, you need to reinstall the packages.
yeah, and that's annoying.
And in my case, because I'm syncing my GitHub too with inside code space, but because you need to log in and sync again. It will require like 5-10 minutes. Because I did that this morning. This is the first time that happened to me.
I think CodeSpace is becoming like the old Windows where you have to reboot and reinstall to like after you put so many packages, it's out. It's like no more installation.
And its timer is weird too. Like we were working on the notebook, but for some reason its timer decided, oh, they're not working.
It's because it's a live demo. So obviously it detects it's a live demo, it's gonna break.
Of course.
So Arten, are you using MLflow for any of your projects in your new role?
Not recently, mostly because I'm my work is mostly like figuring out working. It doesn't have enough like parameters and artifacts that MLflow would make it faster, more efficient. Usually MLflow comes handy when you're working with very like large number of simulations, and.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we are thinking of like a ML toolbox for campus. And so we've been thinking of what are the tools that we need to have and make sure they work. And so we were talking of parallel PyTorch, which Enrique did some tutorials, and then we're doing Ray.io or something next semester. But MLflow is something that keeps coming over and over again.
Yeah. And I think you should also do one on AI inside these like code editors, because I've noticed both VS Code and Colab have include some AI clicks that you could just click on that and keep generate all the code for you. Or VS Code fixes all of your errors, but just click on that and it works beautifully.
I recently used that in my collab with Gemini, and I was surprised. It saved me at least 4 hours because I did not know about that dependency hell. So it was
Yeah.
PyTorch and something else that were fighting each other. So
Yeah, like recently when I discovered that, like I need to search Google or any of that anymore. Just click on that and fix it. I don't even need to know what's the error.
yeah, I don't know how long before they start charging money for it. Right now, all seems to be free and happy, but I have a sinking feeling that that is soon coming to an end.
Well, I do have Copilot Pro, so but you say you have it without Copilot Pro?
Yeah, I have the Google Colab, the regular version, but I'm signed up for something in Google where they keep giving me all the new stuff free for a long time now.
Well, the one I was referring to, Google has one too. The one I was referring to was the VS Code Microsoft Copilot. Maybe I can
Okay.
show that. I don't know if I have it here. Like, for example, when you try to run something. No, oh, I couldn't make MLflow work in my. This is. Well, let's do something else. Oh, it has the generate, which is very nice, but also like. And then I want it to not work.
How much is the VS Code Pro version per month?
Oh, the Copilot, I think it was $10 a month. I think I bought the annual one.
Yeah, for academic, like for the whole university, that's so hard because they do it per person or they want to do it for the whole university. They are not very happy providing it like piecemeal, and that's the hard part about licensing.
Oh, yeah.
And trying to do it per person for the whole university is not easy. You can
But
imagine
it's like
the cost.
it worked like a charm, and then just fix it and run it. And this was a very simple thing. It worked for me for a lot more complicated. Like when my database had empty cells, which happens in data science problems like all the time, it just figured out what module to load and take care of the empty cells and just fixed it.
So I've used Code Llama through a free plugin in VS Code, and it was pretty decent.
Oh, I
So
haven't used that yet. I just saw that a few days ago. For some reason, I didn't see that. But the Amazon.
and yeah, everybody's coming out with their code assistant. So this is we tried one a few months ago. I don't know, Michaela, if you remember, or you guys. I posted that on a Slack where it was pretty easy to integrate our own Word AI into my VS Code, and then it was really easy. Just highlight much like the interaction was identical, and Code Llama is getting better and better.
Yeah.
So it's hard to keep up with this process. But like Artin disappeared. Thank you, Artin, for doing this, and
Yeah, of
I'm
course.
off to my
Nice.
next one. Bye, everybody.
Take care, Nirav. Well, thank you for the discussion and thank you for being here, folks. This was the end of the bioinformatics regular workshop. And I know that it might have been a little bit of a departure of just talking about bioinformatics, but you can see MLflow can really help if you are working with models, especially larger ones. So thank you, Artin, for being here, and thank you very much for everyone's attention.
And by the way, all these AI things that I just showed, if you have MLflow question, that works with those too. Like you can just ask it, oh, use MLflow to do this for me. It'll do it for you in Colab. So you can use MLflow like an expert, you know.
Oh yes, just pay the extra $10 for VS Code Pro.
Colab does that too. That's free.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great semester, and I hope to see you around. Message us if you have any questions. You have my email address, and if you have any questions for Artin, feel free to message me, and I'll refer you to Artin's email. So thank you.